So, here we are again. Time for another episode of our Hidden London Hangouts. My name's Alex. How are you today? We're still in quarantine lockdown because of coronavirus, and our hair, or my hair particularly, is getting much, much longer. It's not a problem that one of our guests on the Hidden London Hangout has. My delightful team from the London Transport Museum are assembled, present and correct again. And first up, off the blocks, is Chris Nix. Hello, Chris.
Hi there, Alex. Nice day again.
A very nice day again, and you are looking very soignée.
Well, it's quite warm here, so needed to a bit toasty in the old broadcast bunker here.
I bet. And Siddy Holloway, what are you dressed in? It's not what are you wearing? It's a little bit sort of creepy, isn't it?
I know. I actually went for a long sleeve today, and I'm already regretting it as it is quite toasty in this room as well, but sort of nautical.
Nautical but icicle is what we all say.
And I just spilled coffee all over my wife.
And you know, well done. And I've actually got a matching mug to go with my matching picnic blanket shirt today. So I'm feeling very, very summery. Laura, what are you wearing?
Hello, Alex. I was just thinking we're all in white and blue, apart from Chris. He's kind of missed out on the kind of colour coordination for today.
He's looking fab, though. I have to say that we get a lot of comments about Chris Nix and his sartorial elegance as well. And there's a lot of buzz, social media buzz, about how your beard suits you.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice to know. Always good to get positive feedback.
And I also noticed as well. What's that to do?
You know, once I found an old photo of Chris Nix, which is when he decided to grow a goatee, and it was stuck on the back of his computer screen. And if anyone from the old S&C team has that photo, please do send it to me, because it was about the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Nix and his goatee beard.
It was my old...
it was like a donut beard, you know, those like kind of
I can tell you liked it, Siddy. You're really selling it to everybody.
I've got to say, it wasn't a great look, and it was on my old ID card, and I took the unusual step of actually graffitiing it myself and drawing in pen to turn myself into Ming from Flash Gordon. So
I love that. He's a great boy for the rules. He's such a boy for the rules, honestly. Mr. Nix never does anything nasty or wrong. But I love the fact he actually defaces his own cards, just as a kind of a mark of his own internal defiance. It's great. Today on the Hidden London Hangout, we're going right into the centre of London to something which... I mean, it's a building now which looks amazing in the booking hall. The platforms actually are quite... in many ways modern and quite bold, in that they use red and green and blue and brown and cream tiles. But way back when, there was something a whole lot more subtle. And we're talking about Piccadilly Circus Station. So first of all, Laura, you're great at painting these bigger pictures for us. Tell us where we're going today.
So Piccadilly Station, I mean, iconic station, centre of London. And we're so very lucky. We get to take people beneath Piccadilly Circus, which is a huge landmark in London. Now, last week we spoke about Highgate, and that was very much about a station that had been abandoned. And this week with Piccadilly, it's much more about adaptation. So some might say an engineering masterpiece as well. And we're so very lucky to have it on the Hidden London kind of programme. So the themes are expansion, architecture, women in war, design, development, shelter of people and art. And the actual tour, I mean, you could be forgiven because, Piccadilly is super complex. We do a great stomach diagram just as you enter the underground part of the tour. But the actual loop, once you get underground, is quite simple. But for me, the delight is when you have that kind of simple tunnel or passageway, and it's combined with the layers of stories of the people that used to work and live down there. These fantastic accounts that the guides just bring to life down there. I mean, what a place to meet. Piccadilly Circus, for a start. You get to go through the beautiful circular Art Deco ticket hall. And then you get to go to a secret spiral stairwell. And that's the start of the tour, of you descending And that's my goosebump moment there. But yeah, fantastic tour. Really love Piccadilly.
And you've got a little snippet of a taster, teaser, delighter.
I'd love to show you just this, a really small clip now, and it will just give you a glimpse at part of the tour. So that was just a really brief clip of the of part of the route that we do, and I hope it just gives you a little bit of a taster of just being underground in that space at Piccadilly.
The thing about this station is, and I've had the joy of going on a little private tour of this place, and it really is a goosebump moment. And what I really love about it is the tile work on the deserted corridor walls, because I'm a massive tile geek. Moquette and tiles are my thing, and I love the fact that so many of them remain down little passageways and in towards the lifts and everything else. There's so much to go at today. First of all, Chris, take us back to around the turn of the 20th century, 1906. What happened in that area then?
So yeah, we're going to drop back into the middle of London, Edwardian London, and the 10th of March 1906 is when the Baker Street and Waterloo Railway, now known as the Bakerloo Railway, gets there first, and is shortly joined in December, on the 15th of December that year, by the Great Northern Piccadilly Brompton Railway, now known as the Piccadilly Railway. They have two surface buildings. You've got the Leslie Green design, lift stations, and they are shifting some serious numbers of passengers. You got, in that first year, 1.5 million people use it. Shows how popular it is. But over the next few decades, that grows to 18 million people, and there's a need to use a new piece of technology, as we've talked about in previous episodes, to really open up those stations and make the passenger flow work a lot more quickly. And so in the 20s, Charles Holden is put to work to redesign the station to have escalators, and its theme is the heart of London, and therefore I guess the heart of the empire. And in 1928, the station opens on 10th of December in this new form, with escalators, much bigger passenger flow, and 50 million people able to use it. Now, of course, we know from previous episodes that if you have a station that's converted to escalators from lifts, you end up leaving behind the lift shafts and the passageways to that lift, and that gives us the stuff that we love on in London, the disused passageways, the tiles that get left behind, and also the interesting reuse stories of the Blitz and life beyond wartime use. So there we go. That's the plotted history. We'll dissect it a bit more.
Fantastic. So, without further ado, let's have a look at some pictures of this place, because, as you say, we've got a history of the building, we've got the booking hall to go into, we've got the fact that the engineering of this place was so intricate to keep it fitting into a certain particular space. And we've also got what it was used for in the war. First of all, let's have a little look at Siddy's slideshow.
So, what is quite unusual, and this is something that we sort of have to depict for our guests when they come on the Hidden London Piccadilly tour, is that we all know Piccadilly to be a station underneath Piccadilly itself. But it didn't start out that way. It actually was a very large station built by Leslie Green. So it had those oxblood red tiles, those semicircular windows, you know, those features that we now have come to know and love. And it actually had 3 different entrances, all connecting together to a mutual booking hall for both the Bakerloo and the Piccadilly line. And what you see there is the corner of Haymarket and Jermyn Street, which had 2 entrances on either side. So you see on the left-hand side, you've got an entrance, rather a wide one and a long one, and another one just to the side on Haymarket. So you just see that just there. And there was also a 3rd entrance on Piccadilly itself. So wow, that is, and that's basically around about where the Hard Rock Cafe is today. So it's all been demolished now and kind of repurposed, but that is where the original entrance into Piccadilly
So
Circus
that was between, say, Lillywhites and Leicester Square. If you're walking from Lillywhites to Leicester Square, it'd be on your right-hand side.
Exactly, it's right
Wow.
next to the Criterion Theatre. So
Amazing.
if you look to the side, there's a little tiny door on the right-hand side of that picture, and that's where the stage door of the Criterion would have been.
Oh, heavens, what a beautiful picture.
Yeah, it really kind of shows it to you, and also it's nice that they actually have these 3 different designs for the same station, but all, you know, with the quintessential Leslie Green kind of facades, which is nice to see. As I said before, it was a mutual ticket hall. So you see there, what we're looking at there is that entrance that I just showed you on Piccadilly is just there in the background, and that is looking towards that exit with the ticket windows to the side.
So if you're walking out towards Piccadilly Circus, you'd walk straight ahead of you and turn left.
Exactly, yeah. And
Wow.
you can see some of the features of a typical Leslie Green station there. You've got the sort of the green tiles. Of course, this is a black and white photo, but you've got the green canthus leaf tiles and the cream as well. Some of those features that you see on some of our hidden London sites, particularly Aldwych, as we've talked about before. And to our right, if we were standing in where this photograph's taken, is where the lifts would have been. Now this shows us that same view taken from the entrance of Piccadilly.
Oh, looking down that way. So they took 2 pictures, one at one end, one at the other, yeah?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And so to our left now would have been the lifts. So there were 8 lifts in Piccadilly Circus, which is the highest number of lifts in any station that was built during that Edwardian time. That's because they always predicted this would be an incredibly busy station. So there were 4 lifts that took you down to the Bakerloo line and 4 lifts that took you down to the Piccadilly line. And they're kind of actually stacked on top of each other, the 2 railways. So the Piccadilly line is deeper than the Bakerloo line, and they kind of lie sort of on top of one another. However, as we said before, as Chris was saying, even with 8 lifts and an emergency spiral staircase, the amount of people coming through there, particularly after the First World War, was just far too much to cope with. Often there would be queues out, you know, to the doors of the ticket hall.
Wow.
There would be problems on the platforms because it gets so overcrowded that people were getting, you know, very, very close to the edge of the platforms. So the rebuilding was very crucial. But as we mentioned before, escalators have to come on an incline, and because every bit of space is being used in that part of town, of course being the heart of London, the best way to fit an escalator into the existing building would have been to go on an incline just through those ticket windows there, but then you would have ended up in the basement of the Criterion.
Not good if you're trying to get a train, is it really?
Exactly. So instead they decided to build from the island occupying Antiros, the statue, and build from that through and allowing.
And that is why we get that major ticket hall in the middle underneath Piccadilly Circus, because they actually they had to move it because you can't move platforms. That's the bottom line, isn't it? You can't shift the tracks or the platforms, so you have to move where the whole thing emerges at ground level, and they decided to do that in the middle of Piccadilly Circus. It's fascinating to see this picture city. I've never seen these before. This is amazing.
Yeah, this one is one that we just discovered in our collection, I think maybe last year only, and it's a great one to show that entire station, that enormous amount of space was dug from one tiny little shaft that, you know, was the island that occupied the statue, commonly known as Eros, but is actually depicting Antiros, which is obviously still occupying Piccadilly Circus today. And so because it's one of the busiest thoroughfares in London, you can't actually stop traffic going through there for years on end, even in the 1920s. So it's a brilliant, brilliant way of constructing the entire station. Now, to give people a slight understanding of what they were building, This is what we call a stomach diagram, and we have another one later on, which we show people on the tours, and it just shows the subterranean ticket hall, that circular ticket hall that they built underneath the circus itself. You've got a spiral staircase there in the middle, but all those corridors and all those escalator shafts that you see in this diagram are all dug from that single shaft in the middle of Piccadilly Circus.
It's a feat of engineering, isn't it?
I think what's really clever about this design is that often when escalators were fitted at stations in favour of lifts, it meant that the ticket hall and the entrance ended up a long, long way away from the original siting, because obviously an escalator goes at an angle rather than straight up and down. With this one, they took the escalators part way down and effectively doubled back on themselves with the routes then to the separate tube lines. So it's a way of staying much more within the existing footprint of the site.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, one of the things that I always kind of can't really wrap my head around is like, this is being done in the 1920s. You know, that's 100 years. That's 100 years ago, and it somehow seems like it should have been only, you know, maybe 50 years, but 100 years ago, Piccadilly Circus Station was being, you know, built and constructed, which is just crazy to think about. Now, here we've got what the ticket hall looked like when shortly after the station opened, not right after it opened, but shortly after. It's got a very kind of, well, it still looks very similar to what it looks like today, except for, of course, we've got ticket barriers and, you know, a slight different kind of look in the middle of the escalators. But by and large, that timeless design of Charles Holden really has kind of held its own.
It's almost possible now, if anyone who's watched these hangouts in the series, I think you could probably go into any tube station built by either Leslie Green or Charles Holden and immediately spot which one designed it, because to me they are iconic designs.
There's a couple of features, in fact, that are worth just picking up on that. First of all, if you look right in the middle at the back, you've got the uplighters on the escalators, which we've talked about before at St John's Wood. And I think we did reference Piccadilly Circus then. There they are. And you've also got the old style ticket machines and the Persimeter on the right there, the ticket booth, which we have one from Queensbury preserved and restored at our depot at Acton. So those are all typical features of stations during that period. And
what's
you can
Persimeter?
It's where you would go to buy your ticket. It's basically a ticket booth.
Oh, a Persimeter?
Yeah.
Never
Okay. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Right. Next photo we have is of Laura and I going down into the disused parts of Piccadilly Circus. So this is the door moment that Laura's spoken about before. So these are the lost tunnels of Piccadilly Circus that got completely abandoned after the station was rebuilt.
You know, it's funny, when you look at those tiles, dare I say this, they're quite crass compared to the beautiful ones that are in that corridor that you're about to walk into. I actually think what was there before was so much more beautiful than what is there now. And that is why it's so nice to be able to do this and show people what's there.
Yeah,
that's the 80s, baby.
Yeah, and also, I mean, so the funny thing is that the Piccadilly Circus refurb was being done shortly after the Jubilee line had been built and opened. So they wanted the same kind of modern elegance for the Piccadilly Circus refurb as they had for the for the Jubilee line. So those very, you know, kind of simple block colours that you get on the Jubilee line, as we've spoken about in our Charing Cross episode, you've got that kind of thinking behind this, basically.
It's worth saying, Alex, that underneath those tiles, the originals are still there. They just tiled straight over them.
Don't even tempt me. I might go down there with a chisel.
I know. Now, what's brilliant about what they've done there is that those tiles you're talking about are just beyond where Laura is stepping in on that photo. but that would attract too much attention with those grille doors. So what they've done is they painted that entire corridor black in order to kind of attract less attention to it. So
send people like me off the scent. Oh, it's a dirty, great old tunnel. That's, oh, what's the point in looking down there?
But it's funny though, because I mean, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and you still don't spot it until somebody really points it out to you, because you're just so used to everything falling into kind of the background, and you're trying to get from A to B, and so the, you know, little things like this really do work. And that is the end of City Slideshow number 1.
Thank you, Siddy. Bless you for that. So far we've got a little bit of a tease. I mean, I'm getting a little twinge of excitement because I know what's coming next. So I've got a fair idea what's coming next anyway. And we've got more huge amounts of lovely, lovely photos to come. But first of all, Chris, just take us back to the point where the remodernisation was taking place at Piccadilly Circus station. Siddy hinted at it with her pictures. Instead of having that very beautiful Leslie Green building, they decided to dig up the middle of Piccadilly Circus, drill down from there, and then put escalators in. But as you mentioned, it was a very intricate design, wasn't it?
It was. So first of all, the clever thing they did was create a steel deck upon which the roads above it could carry on running. And that circulation and ticket hall and all the subways was built underneath the roads. It's a trick that we talked about happening at Charing Cross, done at Oxford Circus as well in that modernisation. But doing
actually, a really good film. Actually, I don't know whether you've seen it, but on YouTube there is a really good BBC documentary about how the Victoria Line was dug, and it shows in really great detail footage of that a metal sort of plank being built over the hole that's being dug to build a station beneath, which meant that Oxford Circus could still carry on being used for traffic. Same clearly was in operation at Piccadilly Circus.
Yeah, I believe the term for it is an umbrella deck. I think that's right. Yeah, it's a very clever way of minimising the disruption while you get on and work quietly away underneath. But I mean, once they got that there, they really did go to town. There was no expense spared on this place. We saw 55 Broadway a few weeks ago, and if that was a sort of a statement through the head office, this one was the public station statement about just how how grand the underground could be. And they're kind of almost unusual sister buildings in that they're both designed by Charles Holden. They share a lot of look and feel in their interior fittings. So they've both got travertine marble from Tivoli and the quarries to line them. They've got lots of bronze work where wood is used, kind of heavy, dark, really high quality wood. Even hospital corners to help it keep clean on the floors. So there were a lot of similarities there, and it really was opened with a lot of pomp and ceremony. The first ticket issued was made out of ivory, and there was a ceremonial lamp button to start the escalators that we have in our collection at Acton. So yeah, it was done with a lot of style and pride.
And it's difficult to explain this in words, but I will at least try. We hinted at it earlier. You can't move the platforms and you can't move the tracks. So when you put an escalator in, one stretch escalator, it obviously moves the station building at ground level a long way away. Not the case in Piccadilly Circus, because as Chris mentioned earlier, they used two shorter lengths of escalator and basically doubled it back, didn't they, Chris? So the whole capsule, if you like, of Piccadilly Circus station is a lot more contained.
That's right. I mean, we've talked before about the concept of wayleave, which is you're allowed to build the tube underneath roads in a way that if you built it under buildings, you'd have to acquire the freehold of the building usually to be allowed to do that. Because Piccadilly Circus has got quite a big area of road in what is essentially a large kind of roundabout area, it meant that there was a fair bit of space they could go at. If they could stay underneath it, they could kind of go out and back again. And that's what they did, whilst also giving that area a convenient subway for people to be able to, not have to cross the roads to be able to cross the street.
Now, World War II came along, And when this new station with escalators and all this glamour and grandeur opened up, there was obviously a number of corridors and old lift shafts that were not needed anymore. And they were just locked off. As you can see, there were grill doors everywhere just to keep people out because there was no reason for them to go in there. And of course, World War II, there was an awful lot of people who wanted to get downstairs and make sure that they could stay safe during the bombs. So this is where those old disused corridors and passageways came back into use for World War II, didn't they, Siddy?
They did. Perhaps not in the way that we would think. So you're right. You've got these long corridors. You've got these lift shafts. They're all disused, and you've got thousands, and I mean thousands of people sheltering each night at Piccadilly Circus. Largely because, I mean, it makes sense. It's right in the heart of London. It's right in the heart of the West End. It would have been very convenient for people working around there, or anything, you know, traveling there would have been easy. So thousands of people sheltering there each night. However, people were not actually sheltering in the tunnels that we take people into. They were actually used for toilet facilities to start off with.
Delicious.
Now, when I say toilet facilities, I mean basically, as we talked about with Clapham South, buckets with a bit of disinfectant.
Oh, blimey.
And just a way to, you know,
purge
those, and I will show you an example of that in just a moment in the secret slideshow.
You mean to say you're going to show us the bucket rather than anything else, yeah?
I'm just going to show you the hopper that would have gotten rid of.
Good. I don't think we really need to see you purging, to be honest. That's something to think. But,
yeah, I think that's best left. Now, and also, what's something that people don't know about is that the toilets were later slightly moved in the tunnels, and the tunnels were made available for storing of priceless artifacts from the Museum of London, or the London Museum as it was known then. Now, the London Museum housed large parts of the Tate collection and some of the collection that the Museum of London have today. So it's quite an extraordinary story.
It's interesting as well, all this was going on while the new station was still operating as a tube station. And then in those disused little passageways and tunnels, there is literally a monumental amount of valuable artwork and documents, I should think, that were just being kept out of the way, out of harm's way, down in the tube station. You just cannot imagine what was going on in World War II. And I wonder how many of the public who were down there sheltering had any idea what they were sharing that space with. I just have no idea. Also, I noticed as well, Chris, that the station seemed to change its name. There's Piccadilly Circus in some pictures just say Piccadilly.
Yeah, I mean, it's natural just to shorten things, as we all do. I mean, Lord knows the name of the line was a real mouthful originally. Now we just call it the Piccadilly line.
Also, as well, you mentioned 55 Broadway as being sort of the glamorous headquarters of London Underground, and there is a Hidden London Hangout on YouTube about that. We did that a few weeks ago. But this was the sort of the public mimic of 55 Broadway, wasn't it? Was it a time where London Underground or London Transport felt proud of what they were doing? Because it was a time when everyone else never seemed to have any money because of what was going on around them.
Yeah, I think in the 20s, obviously, there being the Great Depression. It is quite common during times of prolonged depression to do large-scale kind of civil engineering projects because they're expensive and it's cheaper to do them when you can hire labour more cheaply. But there's undoubtedly a huge amount of pride goes into the building of the reworking of Piccadilly Circus. Yeah,
I do love an oxblood tile. I'm a Leslie Green fan first and foremost, but I have to say, as Charles Holden Station goes, I really do like Piccadilly. There's something very grand about it. And Laurie, the weird thing about it is that you've got all the station with all the escalators, and then, as you say, you have this little secret spiral staircase that's still there that you take people down, and that is where the magic seems to open up, doesn't it? That corridor is so kept away from the paying public that it is like going down into a time warp.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the tour starts. We have to get through some health and safety at the beginning of each tour. So there's that kind of at the very beginning when people are registered. But for me, the event or the tour really starts as soon as after that. So for Piccadilly to walk kind of past the memorial and then down the spiral staircase, what a lovely way to start a tour. And I've been to that station hundreds of times before we started the Hidden London research. Never knew that staircase was there at all. I think it's the former access shaft used for the part of the station construction. And I guess if you're in the know, you might know it was behind that section. But I'd walked past it hundreds of times and had no idea it was there. So what a lovely way to start, rather than just going down an escalator, which we do on our kind of commute anyway. Yeah. It's a fabulous way to start a tour, and really is one of my favourite parts, because yeah, that's where it begins, and I hope people start to be transported and really start to enjoy the journey and the experience they're going to go on.
It's quite funny. I often think of myself and my journeys through Piccadilly Circus, and to be perfectly honest, I'm usually too drunk to notice where I am when I'm going down. But fabulous stuff. Let's have a little look at some more photographs. Secret Cities slideshow. I think it's about time we had some more pics.
So there are the tiles that you were just talking about, Alex.
Aren't they just? I mean, look at them, green and pale blue and cream, and they go on for miles.
Yeah, that's absolutely one of my favourite colours of green, those tiles. It's phenomenal.
Chris and I went privately one night. It was one of our pizza and Prosecco nights. And Chris knows exactly how to please a boy, I can tell you, because we turned a corner and did I just take a massive gasp of breath, Chris?
You did, because I've seen how audiences respond to that many times before. I know that is one of the big wows. You round that corner to what I think is probably the longest tiled passageway that you'll see. So it is quite a surprise when you go around it to see it preserved there. It's beautiful.
It was ecstasy down there, Siddy, I can tell you.
Well, so that shot is of one of the passageways. Leading up to the lift shafts. And if I go like that, this is just to show, we're talking about people sheltering in the underground. Here are some people sheltering on the platforms of the Piccadilly line at Piccadilly Circus. As I said before, up to 7,000 people would stay in Piccadilly each night. So it was incredibly crowded and incredibly busy. And those abandoned tunnels mostly occupied toilets to start off with. And there you've got an image of what was the toilet hopper at Piccadilly.
It looks like something off a children's TV show, doesn't it? It's sort of made up out of bits and bobs. And that's the thing that takes the poo away.
It is the thing that takes the poo away, yeah. So you see that funnel, that's where you pour the content of the bucket into. It goes into the little...
You can also just see that there's a kind of a mesh grill hanging in front of it that's designed to be put into the funnel, just to stop things that are too big to get pumped going into the pipe. So if you...
God!
A diet check before you went down there.
Yeah, if you lose your watch as you're pouring the bucket in, that grill is your last hope to catch it before it goes.
Have you been eating lots of potatoes? Go away.
Oh God, yeah.
Sorry,
anyway.
It's the boys again. I'm sorry.
I know. Yeah. Anyway.
Lowering the tone.
And also, okay, I'm just gonna change the photo now. Now, here we've got another, brilliant photo. This is the part of the collection of the London Museum being taken out of those disused passageways in 1946, so the year after the war ended. And you've got two images there, and this seems to be very much a staged photograph, in my opinion. But it's quite, yeah. It gives you a sense of like what the things were that were being stored down there.
Yeah, the ceremonial post-war removal of all those artifacts. And look as well, the frieze says Piccadilly, the roundel says Piccadilly Circus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, we've found but we've also found some brilliant kind of hidden artifacts and hidden sort of gems down there. We know that some parts of the tunnels that we don't take people into, but some parts of the old tunnels were converted into offices. And we kind of realized that from some diagrams, but also because when you look closely on the walls.
Oh, what's
now
that?
This, Alex, is what Sidney was just starting to talk about there. It's evidence of a cultural artifact having been put on the wall many decades ago.
Cultural artifact, Chris. What's a cultural artifact then?
It's a museum term for things which don't go on general display. So,
is Carnival maybe a publication about big public events or what?
I wouldn't know. Maybe it's to do with the circus, Piccadilly Circus.
I mean, this lady might have been working in the circus.
I bet. Right.
I think it's time for the weather.
Yes. Interestingly, I think every viewer has currently just twigged what we're talking about. So this could have been maybe an office area.
Yes, it probably would have been some sort of office area for people working.
So like 1940s Pirelli calendar, that kind of thing.
Something along those lines is
we'll let you do your research privately, Alex, on that one.
I maybe won't give him those pictures, but thank you for giving me the offer.
This is for you, Alex.
Oh.
This is the Bakerloo line side of the disused tunnels. Unfortunately, we don't take people there as a part of the tour because there's not very much to see there, unfortunately. And there's also an enormous amount of stuff that is stored there that's quite hazardous to be around, that you could trip over, that is moved very frequently because of engineering crews at night.
But so, look at the tiles, they're beautiful.
They are beautiful, that is true, I agree. And just if you were to walk up that ramp that you see just there to the left, you get to the lift shaft of the Bakerloo line.
Wow.
And you can sort of just see in the background how those lift shafts would have connected. And then there is another shot of a staircase that goes up to a kind of like a separate level. Right. Chris, do you want to explain a bit about that?
Yeah, so as you know from previous episodes, whenever there are lift shafts left behind, they are always considered as a possible ventilation route, just like Down Street was, and that's what happened with this lift shaft. So they had to preserve a route for the air to move freely, and I think if we go to the next shot, you can see this, which is the concrete finished route for the air to get out of that lift shaft and up to surface level. Sidney and I nicknamed this the squash court. We haven't had a game in there yet, but it just walked in there and that's exactly what it felt like.
Heavens above, this is remarkable. This is all in an old lift shaft.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's massive, completely massive. Now, that's the last of my secret slideshow.
That was absolutely fantastic. So in many ways, Piccadilly Circus, the evolution of it was a station with lifts, became a station with escalators. You could just leave the story there, but actually it's the devil is in the detail with Piccadilly, and all those amazing little locations that you've seen on the pictures. You had the original Piccadilly line corridors, and then we went into the Bakerloo line bit that no one goes to anymore, and then the ventilation shafts. It's a phenomenal place. Sidney, Laura, Chris, thank you so much for the gallop round that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, notes, queries and questions. First of all, if you want to get involved and talk to us, right below us right now is the YouTube comment box. Make sure that you leave comments and questions and thoughts about our Hidden London Hangouts. Also, where you might like us to go down below. All right, make sure that you let us know where you'd like us to go. Subscribe and like these films as well. You can, if you watch this going out at 6 o'clock on a Saturday, you'll also be able to join us in the conversation box as well, and we chat our way through the show as well. And also you can follow us on Instagram at LT Museum, at Alex Grundon. You can follow Sidney Holloway, and you can follow Chris Nix as well to make sure that you're all part of our little Hidden London family too. And as I say, when you give us some questions, we like to answer them. First of all, we've got a question here from one of our wonderful people. What date did Down Street Station close? And I realise I may be opening a can of worms because Chris and Sidney argue about this no end. So without big arguments, Sidney, when do you think it shut?
So I think it shut on the 22nd of May, 1932, which is when the escalators at Hyde Park Corner were switched on. So it was definitely a weekend over that time, which incidentally is around this time now.
Yeah. And Chris, what do you think the date was?
So the poster that was produced does indeed say 22nd of May, 1932. There is a book which we use a huge amount and consider it almost as a primary source, despite the fact it's actually a secondary source as a book. And that describes Down Street closing after traffic hours on May the 21st, 1932. So I guess it depends on your interpretation as to whether they're saying after the end of the day on May 21st. Or
Laura.
Yeah.
Is it okay to say that it closed in May 1932?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So the answer is it shut in May 1932. Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember why I didn't
right?
give a precise date on the recording? Alex, I will just say one other thing as well. I think you mentioned about the siding opening, and I think you said the 27th of May. Same book says it was May 30th.
Oh, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. I've still got the document here. 27th, Saturday night, ready for traffic on Sunday morning. There you go.
And don't forget that document you've got will be released in advance of it happening. So maybe they intended it to, but
couldn't find the light switch.
Yeah.
Couldn't find the light switch. I love it. Interestingly, you just mentioned that book, and that might actually answer the next question, because Sam left us a message to say, can you recommend a good book to start off our knowledge of the Tube? Now, look, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
I know what you're going to say.
That one.
This one.
Yeah.
Hidden London, yeah.
But at the same time, that book that you had in your hand is probably a pretty good book too.
So yeah, Alex, the Rails Through the Clay, it's not in print anymore, so you can still find copies of it around on the second-hand market. It is very thorough if you want to know kind of detailed history. We use it a lot. Sidney and I are in there a lot. By Desmond Croom and Alan Jackson. There is another one which is still in print called simply Underground, very memorable, which the museum produced for the 150th anniversary of the Tube, written by our director Sam Mullins, our head curator at the time David Bounds, and our previous head curator Oliver Green. That is a very good general canter through the subject of the Underground. Stations, posters, tiling, you'd love it.
Yeah, I might have a look at that myself, actually. Thank you very much. Okay, another question. This is from, now this is really interesting because I like to have a little look and see who's following us on Instagram. On YouTube, this person's called Appliance Historian, okay? And you're going to know why, because her name's Jenny, and she used to, in the 60s, she used to demonstrate, review and test electrical appliances in the electricity board. So when she used to go into these shops and she'd say, this is how you use a cooker, and this is a wringer on a washing machine. Absolutely fantastic. So I'm loving your pictures, by the way, Jenny. She says, back in the days when we could all travel freely, I noticed the moquette on odd seats on the Metropolitan line was looking really frayed and worn. Is this just down to people putting their feet on the seats, or a batch that doesn't last as long? Now, we did the moquette thing. It's feet, isn't it? I can't stand it when people put feet on the seats. They're not puffs. They're other seats.
Yeah, no, you're right. Undoubtedly, putting feet on seat does increase the wear of them, and the way that those seats are set out on the S-Stop trains means that people do put their feet on them more than perhaps other lines. The other thing is, if you remember, we were talking about the different types of maquette. The maquette on the S-Stop is fully cut, so there are no loops in it. Whereas some maquettes have got loops and sort of bands woven into them as well, and those tend to wear a bit better and protect the cut maquette. So probably a bit of both, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Isabel Greathead, we know what you did there. We love your surname. Greathead Shield and all that, the thing that used to dig the tunnels. Brilliant episodes, fueling my love for moquette even more, loving all the other stuff. Thanks also, thank you very much for that. And Gary has sent us a picture of him receiving his book, the book that you guys bang on about. Sidney, I believe we got a picture. he looks happy, doesn't he? He looks happy. Thank you, Gary. For in fact, actually, I thought I had it bad. Look at that. All those posters in his house. That's amazing. Well done, Gary. Glad you got your book. Enjoy the read of it. I belted through that book in, I think, a couple of days. It was amazing. And finally, thank you very much, as I say, to Laura, to Siddy, and to Chris. You're just wonderful. Remember to follow us on YouTube. Remember to follow us on Instagram. Keep your questions coming. We'll get them answered. Next week, we're going to go and visit another place which is just so bursting with history. It's Moorgate. But we're going to leave you today with a really lovely photograph that we received from one of our happy viewers, saying that this is how they love to relax on a Sunday watching the Hidden London Hangouts. I don't think we need to say any more, do we really? Have a great day.
I think that's remarkable.
Isn't it? I love the fact that it's you on the telly as well.
Yeah, I think it's got the same TV as me.
I would agree with that as well. See, that's what happens, girls, when you disappear for the week.
Yeah.
So, is that Chris?
So, yeah, very good, very good. So, as always, Moorgate next week. Moorgate next week. Have yourself a great day. Shave your legs and stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.